What's up everyone, this is Bacon, and today we're going to be going over 8 tips for players who are just starting out in Clash of Critters that will help you with progressing in the game. So let's go ahead and jump into number 1. So number 1 and 2 are kind of a package deal. The first one is using your wish boxes wisely. Now this is kind of a 2-point tip. One, make sure you're using them on heroes that are actually going to be, pretty good and strong heroes. It doesn't make sense to using them on heroes that just aren't very good. And I think a big way you can kind of determine which heroes are good is looking at which ones have hot next to them, which seems kind of goofy, but a lot of these heroes or Tataris are really strong heroes. Now, obviously, there are some on here that I think are pretty good and worth building that don't have hot next to them. For example, let's see, where are they at? The Red Fox person, I don't actually know the name of it, is pretty strong. So that's one where it doesn't have hot next to it, but is worth building. But overall, like these top 4, very strong heroes. These 2 also very strong. The deer, the puppy, I don't know their actual names, so I'm just gonna call them by what they look like. Are some of the praying mantis, pink praying mantis. Those are all really strong heroes, and so make sure you're using them on ones that are worth building. It doesn't make sense to use them on ones that just aren't very strong, and so you want to make sure that you are avoiding wasting those. The one that looks like a garbage bag is kind of garbage. Unfortunately, the mole, not so great, so on and so forth. So make sure you're not just kind of blowing them on, heroes that aren't worth building up. Another thing you can do is to make sure that you are kind of spreading out the love. There are kind of power spikes based on evolution, and so, for example, this guy, he is evolved. It doesn't make sense for me to use my wish boxes on him. It makes sense to go to the next hero that maybe doesn't have the star level to evolve, and I want to get them to that power spike point. Now, the second part of this is how you feed your Tataris. Now, Tataris get really significant stat bonuses when you do level them up via feeding, and so, for example, let's go ahead and give him that. I'm going to just give him the rest of those, then I'm going to give him the rest of those, and then that's what I'm going to call for the day with him. Now, when you're feeding, you do not want to waste the feeding on lower tier heroes. Now, you can figure out which heroes are lower tier in a few ways. One, if they have a blue background, that just means they are the lowest tier, I guess you could say. Not worth feeding them. Now, another way to check is if their evolution is only 2. So you can see here in his first one, it's blue, the second one's purple, and there's no more. Not worth feeding these guys. One, because they're just not as strong as the 4-tier evolution heroes, but also they don't really benefit as much from feeding because a lot of the evolution trials require feedings to a certain extent. And so you can see here, this is rank C, because I fed him enough to level up his rating where he will get a little juice to his defense. And you can see here, when you go from C to B, there's a pretty substantial jump. You don't see it there, but 10% to 25%, that's pretty big. And that's how a lot of them are, where they get these pretty substantial jumps. So make sure you are feeding heroes that you, 1, are going to be utilizing and are very strong, but 2, are not these lower tier heroes that kind of fill a lot of the fodder space on your kind of list of Tataris. The 4th piece of advice is to make sure you do Horde evasion when you can. It'll appear up here when it is active, and Horde evasion is somewhat time consuming. Unfortunately, you get 3 attacks on Horde invasion, but you do get a substantial amount of rewards from it. So if I go ahead and look at their rank, currently I've only done 1 battle of my 3, and I'm going to get 390 marbles, 220k candies, and 10 capsules. Now you can see first place gets a good amount more, especially when it comes to the Tatari capsules. Now, that is a reason in of itself to make sure you are participating. Each battle, depending on how long you can last, is probably about 5 to 10 minutes. Unfortunately, these happen every 3 hours. So if you are going to max grind this, you would do it, 8 times if you're not going to sleep. But I would say doing 2 of these a day is probably a good aim for that, or even 1. Doing these when it's available when you're playing is a pretty good idea because you do get a pretty substantial amount of rewards that you do not want to miss out on. My 5th piece of advice, and this might be pretty obvious, is to do your mode challenges every day. Even if you can't clear anything, make sure you just try, because sometimes you underestimate how much stronger you are compared to, you know, a day or two ago when you face a different boss. So make sure you're using at least one or two of these challenges to try to go to the next level, because you do get a substantial amount of rewards. You do get a large amount of rewards just by logging in every day from these boss battles based on your difficulty. So if I clear difficulty 20, I'm going to get more passive rewards from this every day than if I only clear difficulty 5. So the farther you can clear, the more rewards you'll get. You can see here's my current amount of rewards that I get from these bosses, and this will increase as I kind of move up the ladder. You can see here too, here's kind of the ranking, the damage leaderboards, where you can actually get some of the digestives, which are pretty rare. Normally you can only get these from buying them in the game. Pretty rare resources overall. Now, this also includes the badge dojo. Make sure you're trying to get those cleared when you have them available. You can see here I have 4 badges done, and I'm getting stat buffs of 10% from all these except the water one. Those are pretty substantial, and they definitely do add up, so make sure you are doing these when you can. If you're not strong enough, that's fine, but if you're, you know, for me, for example, you can see here that my water team is just not very strong, so I'm going to be focusing building up my water heroes next, so I can clear this and kind of move on to the next dojos once I have enough evolved Tataris. For the 6th tip, we're going to go to the battlefield, and this is where I think a lot of people don't really put a lot of time or effort into thinking about what they're doing when fighting different waves, especially the boss waves. A lot of people will just click quick deploy and let things just kind of run how they are, but that can be a mistake because quick deploy does not deploy your tier 2 Tataris, and so that means that, you know, even if you have a Tatari that is only a tier 2, but he has, you know, 1,000,000 stars, it's not going to prioritize them. So this is a situation where I would personally recommend, you know, looking at your heroes you have on here. For example, Trash Bag is kind of hot garbage. My pairs are pretty high, and I think they'll defend a little better than my Trash Bag. And so I'm going to swap them out. And then this guy here, he's not really like a true strong tank, so maybe I'm going to put in Crabman, who I can put in instead. Now that's something that I would recommend doing, and then you go ahead and battle, let things play out, see where different waves are stronger or weaker, and then adjust. But definitely do not overlook your tier 2 heroes, especially early on when they're a lot easier to evolve compared to your other tier 1 heroes. My 7th tip, and I don't know why I keep calling them heroes, they are Tataris, but is to focus on the elements, because you get a pretty substantial damage buff and then damage reduction. You can see here, if I have someone who is, let's see, these guys are going to have a 50% damage reduction, which is pretty substantial. But what's even more significant is the 200% damage buff that my green thumbs up Tataris gets when they're attacking zombos with a elemental advantage. So make sure you are really not just disregarding it, thinking, okay, well, this guy's evolved twice, he's just strong, I can just kind of ram through it and just beat the wave and whatever. Generally, that's a pretty substantial difference when it's between 50% and 200%, so you definitely want to prioritize waves and the different elemental differences. And now the next pointer I want to touch on is make sure you are looking at these waves when setting up your team. When it comes to boss waves, what I like to do is clear the board. I like to set up my front line, so I'm going to put him here. And a lot of times where they put him is actually pretty smart. That's based on elemental advantages generally. You can see the water guys there. I'm going to put leaf pair guy there. And then for my last tank, let's just put penguin there. And so I have my front line established, and now I'm going to go wave by wave and decide which one, based on the elements, do I want to put in. And sometimes this doesn't always work, but a lot of times I find that it is pretty helpful. I'm going to put him here, and then so this next one, water, fire is pretty strong. I already have a water, so let's put a fire, and then let's put another water. And then this one, I'm going to put a leaf. This is also where the boss is going to come down. So I want to put some, you know, the strongest heroes that I can really afford putting there. I'll put him there for now. Might have to actually, no, let's take a look at the earth. I'm going to put him there, adds some little stalling, and does a good amount of damage. I'm going to skip this wave and go to my water one. I'm going to put him there, and then I'm also going to go ahead and put my little snow blob thing there. And then lastly, I'm just going to see who I have left that is the strongest, and I'm just going to kind of slot them in. And I think these ones are probably what's going to work best. And so now that I have my team, I'm gonna try and see if it clears. If it doesn't clear, adjust accordingly based on which waves clear and which ones don't. And my last piece of advice, especially for free-to-play players, is just to have fun. This is not a game where you're going to clear 10 chapters in one day. You're not going to be making these huge gains every single day. While some days you might have bigger gains than others, it's meant to be an AFK style game. You're meant to play for a little bit every day, and then over time get more marbles, gain more evolutions, more Tataris, and then slowly make progress. This is a game that takes time. Obviously, if you spend money, you are going to progress faster. But if you're a free-to-play player, you can only push and run against the wall so many times until you just can't do anything else. So make sure you are having fun and just taking time to enjoy the game and not taking it too seriously. If you like this video, make sure you like and subscribe below. I will continue making Clash of Critters content on top of my normal content around AFK Arena. But thank you guys for checking this out, and as always, hope you have a great day. Peace.